Hi, this is Tamara from mooglyblog.com, and in this video, I'm going to be demonstrating how to crochet the ring rose bag, which is a free pattern you'll find on mooglyblog.com. Please go to the links in the description where you'll find both right and left-handed video tutorials, a link to the written pattern, and all the supplies you need. To make this pattern, you'll need 4 balls of Peyton's Crochet socks, 2 each in 2 colors. Optionally, you may want to use a 3rd color to make the handle, as I've done here. Otherwise, you can use ribbon, I-cord, a thin rope, leather, whatever you like to use for your handle. If it's stretchy, like this one, you'll need about 35 inches. If it's not so stretchy, you'll probably want about 40 inches. You'll also need plastic canvas, and I'm going to be making a smaller sample size today, so I've already pre-cut these, but you'll want your 2 pieces cut to 5.5 inches by 4.75 inches. Finally, you'll need a wooden ring. To make the full-size bag, as shown here, I use this medium-sized one from a variety pack that I got. It's approximately 1 7/8 inches wide, measuring side to side here on the outside of the ring. But again, you can use whichever size ring you actually like. It's also really helpful to have stitch markers, and of course you'll need a yarn needle and scissors, and with the Peyton's Crochet socks, you'll need to use a USG 4mm crochet hook. This one is from Susan Bates. Now for demonstrating today, I'm going to be using a different yarn and hook size, but this is the hook size and this is the yarn called for in the pattern. So first things first, let's take a closer look at the ring rose bag. This is the ring rose bag, finished and full size. You can see it's a great little size for just the essentials. I can fit my wallet, sunglasses, keys, and a few other small items in here. Now, as I mentioned, I used a stretchy handle so that it will stretch to fit around my wrist quite easily. You may want to use a longer handle if your choice is not a stretchy one. And here is that little ring, and basically, if I flip it over here, you can see that the handle acts as a drawstring around the top, then it comes down through the front here, and then we sew it down in the front of the bag. The ring is strung on there so that it just sort of falls out of the way, and we've got a great way to open up and get into our bag and get all our stuff. And then when it's time to close, you just bring up that ring, pull the back of the drawstring through, and you're ready to go. Now, this is made again with Peyton's Crochet socks, which is a fingering weight yarn. So when we make this bag, we hold it doubled. Let me pull in some of the yarn here. You can see we need 2 balls. We do actually use more than 1 ball, so let's go ahead and buy 2 balls. Don't try and pull from both ends of one skein of yarn. But when you do crochet this, you'll want to hold 2 strands, so 1 from each ball together as you crochet. For demonstrating today, I'm going to use a heavier yarn with a slightly larger hook, so it's a little easier to see the stitches. Now the first piece you make to make your ring rose bag is the bag bottom. This is what's going to hide it when we sew in those ends and on the bottom of our bag. So this is just a square of 24 single crochets across and 24 rows. Finally, there's one round where you work all the way around the square, and you've got your 24 stitches across the top, chain 1, 24 stitches down the side, chain 1, 24 stitches across the foundation chain 1, and then 24 stitches up the side, chain 1, and finally join and finish off. That's it, a very simple square. Full written instructions are included, but after you've made this one, you just go ahead and set it aside. Then we begin the main bag portion, and I've made a small beginning one here. Now, I have worked, basically, we're going to say my 24 stitches and 24 rows. It's actually 12 here again, just for demo purposes. But when you've got your square made, we work that round all the way around again, just as we did on the bag bottom. But this time we do not chain 1 at the corners. Just work 24 across, 24 down the side, 24 across the foundation chain, and 24 up the other side. That is your round 25. We're switching from rows to rounds there. And then you're ready for round 26 through 35. Okay, so here I am at the end of round 25. And you can see I've put a stitch marker in the first and last stitch of the round here before I join. This is really handy because rounds 26 all the way through to the end of the bag actually will be worked in turned rounds, which means we're working in the round and joining with a slip stitch to this first stitch, like I'm going to do right now, but then we're going to turn. So our even numbered rounds will be worked, oops, almost lost my slip stitch there. My even numbered rounds will be worked from the inside of the bag, and odd numbered rounds will be worked from the outside of the bag. So rounds 26 through 35 are otherwise quite simple. We chain 1 and single crochet in each stitch around. Now this is where those stitch markers come in really handy. I've turned. For 26, I want to work from the inside, and you want to make sure that you start working in that first stitch, which is really the last stitch of the previous round, not in that slip stitch. So with that stitch marker, I know that is where I need to work my first single crochet, and I can go ahead and move that stitch marker up to that new first stitch. Then just single crochet in each stitch around and join and turn. And like I say, we'll do that all the way through round 35. Okay, so I've only worked a couple rounds on our little sample here, but you can see how it really does pull up and start creating that really great bag shape. So after you've worked through round 35, then it's time to go ahead and break your first color of yarn, your color A. There we are. So I actually did that before the join because I like to use a needle to join my seams. But you can see here, I've kept the stitch markers in that first and last stitch, and that'll come in handy again here in just a moment as we join our new color. So I'm just going to go ahead and use my needle here to close up that seam. There we are. And normally, of course, I would take my time perhaps and weave in that end, but for now I'm just going to tack it down there and set that aside so we can come back here to our sample. So with round 36, we are adding our new color, and that would be the rose marl in the original. And again, that would be with the yarn held doubled. I'm just keeping it single here today for demo purposes. I know some people will want to see it with larger yarn. Sometimes people want to see it with the original yarn, but I had to make a decision. So today we're going with the bigger yarn. So for round 36, since this is a wrong side row, worked from the inside of the bag, you want to make sure that's the direction you're coming from, that you've turned. And then we're going to join to the first stitch. So that would be right there, our handy dandy stitch marker again with our first color. So you can go ahead and just stick your hook right in there. You might have to pull the stitch marker actually out if it's in the way. There we go. So insert your hook, go ahead and yarn over, pull up a loop and chain one. And then we're ready to continue around with round 36. Again, though, we're just going to single crochet in each stitch around. So just as we've been doing before, this time we're just doing it in a new color. Now I do want to go ahead and move that stitch marker up to that new first stitch, but otherwise just single crochet all the way around for round 36. Okay, so I'm just finishing up round 36. So I've gone ahead and moved up that stitch marker to the last stitch, and I'm just going to pull that end to the inside of the bag. If you forget to, no big deal. You can send it to the inside later with a yarn needle. And then I will slip stitch in that first stitch there. So we are all finished with our round 36. Then we're going to turn and work round 37 from the outside of the bag here. And round 37 is where it gets a little fun, and we bring in the Trinity stitch for some texture. So to start working the Trinity stitch here in the round, we're going to start with a chain of 2. And this is kind of going to act as a turning chain 1 and a chain 1 space, basically. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and move that stitch marker up into that space, but I still want to keep this stitch mark so I know where I begin. So maybe I'll go ahead and grab a third stitch marker here. I'm just going to go ahead and put it right around that chain so I know that that is my chain 1 space when I come all the way back around. Then what I'm going to do is single crochet 3 together, working into each of the first 3 stitches. So that's why I like having that first stitch marker there so I don't accidentally go back in that turning chain, or excuse me, the slip stitch rather. So I'm going to go into that first one that's marked there. Go ahead and then pull this one out of the way. I know I'm in the right spot. So I'll yarn over and pull up a loop. Go to the next stitch. Move that stitch mark out of the way there so you can see. The next stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. And go to the third one. Insert, yarn over and pull up a loop. Now I've got 4 loops on my hook, so to finish off, I'm going to yarn over and pull through all 4 of those loops. Then chain 1, and then we're going to do it again. But now we're going to work into the previous stitch. So that means the last one that we went into to make that previous single crochet 3 together, and the next 2 stitches. So we go into that same stitch as the last leg of our previous decrease, yarn over and pull up a loop, and then do the same thing in the next 2. 1 and 2. Now again, we've got 4 loops on our hook, so we yarn over and pull through all 4 loops. Then chain 1 and do it again. Right back in that previous stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, and then each of the next 2. 1 and 2. Yarn over and pull through all 4 loops and chain 1. And we're going to continue this all the way around. So I will see you as we get to the end of round 37. All right, so I've worked almost all the way around round 37 here, but you can see there is 1 stitch remaining. And try and get that a little better there. You can see that last single crochet 3 together there, and then I've chained 1, and now I've got 1 stitch remaining in the previous row. So to finish this up, we're going to make one more single crochet 3 together. Just as before, we'll go into the previous one. And then we're going to go into the next one, which is our last marked stitch here. I'm going to go ahead and get that stitch marker out of the way. And then what we want to do is we want to come over here and look for the base of that first one. So that same stitch there that we worked, first leg of our single crochet 3 together, the very first one we made, it's right there, right underneath our stitch marker. And that's where we need to go into again to pick up that last leg for this one, like so. Now we've got all 4, so we yarn over and pull through to finish. We're not going to chain 1 again. We're going to finish with that single crochet 3 together, and then we're going to slip stitch into that marked chain 2. So before I do that, I want to go ahead and put a stitch marker right in the top of that last single crochet 3 together because it's our last stitch for this round. And then as I say, I'm just going to insert my hook right in that chain 2 space there and slip stitch. And that is the end of round 37. Now, round 38, another even round. We're simply going to chain 1, work, chain, and turn. We're going to work from the inside of the bag again, and we're going to single crochet in each stitch and chain space around. So same as the other single crochet rounds we've been doing, just now sometimes we'll be working into chain spaces. So let's start again, working to the top of that single crochet 3 together. We know that's our last stitch, and it's marked here, so we'll go ahead and move that stitch marker on up. There we are. And then you just want to make sure that you get each one of those single crochets, or single crochet 3 togethers, I should say, as well as the chain spaces in between. So you can really use those little V's along the top line of your previous row to help you if you get a little lost. You just want to make sure you have the same number of stitches, as long as you're counting those chains, in every round. Sometimes, like this one, it wants you to go through the actual chain itself, which can be tricky. So just make sure you're going down into that chain space. It's a lot easier to get your hook in there, and single crochet all the way around. Okay, so I just finished round 38, worked from the inside of our bag here. You can see here I've got round 38 made right here. And for rounds 39 through 56, we just repeat rounds 37 and 38. So we've got our Trinity stitch row followed by a single crochet row. Single crochet row worked from the inside of the bag. So after we have made enough repeats, we've gone through 56 rows or rounds total, then it's time for round 57, which again would be from the outside of the bag. Now this starts with a chain 4, which counts as our first treble crochet. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we can go ahead and put a stitch marker right in the top of that 4th chain, since that does count as our first stitch. There we go. Then we're simply going to treble crochet in each stitch around. So to do that, let me slow down and do that again here for those who haven't worked a treble crochet before. We're going to yarn over twice and then go into each stitch around. Now that chain 4 counted as our first stitch, so we want to skip over that one and go into the next one. So we yarn over and pull up a loop here, and then we yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. So this would be our first stitch, so we can go ahead and move that stitch marker out of the way. Now, if you don't like the look of the chain 4, you have an alternative. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this back a little bit. The way I like to actually begin this round is with a chainless starting treble crochet. So I'm going to pull back here until I get to that first loop there that I joined with a slip stitch the previous round. Get that back on my hook and turn. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pull this loop up to the height of a treble crochet. So nice and high. Then I'm going to secure the loop with my finger and wrap the loop around my hook twice. Then I'm going to go into that first stitch. Should have had a stitch marker in it, of course, if we were starting over. Yarn over and pull up our loop. And you'll notice I've still got a grip with that top loop with my finger there. Then we can yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2, finally release, yarn over and pull through 2. So I find this looks a lot more like a treble crochet than a chain 4 does, but you can do it however works for you. Now I'll go ahead and put a stitch marker in this one because I know it's my first stitch. There we are, and then we can continue to treble crochet around. So one more time, that's yarn over twice, go into the next stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. So continue to treble crochet all the way around. So here I am at the end of round 57. I've worked a treble crochet in each stitch around, went ahead and marked that last one, and I can simply join with the slip stitch the top of my chain 4 or my chainless starting treble, whatever you've used. Then rounds 58 and 59 are quite simple. We simply chain 1 and turn, or turn and chain 1, however you like to do it, and single crochet in each stitch around. So at the end of round 59, you'll have worked from the outside, just a simple round of single crochet. That just firms up the top of our bag a little bit. But for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and say we're done with that part here. And I will go ahead and finish this off. Now again, normally I would use my yarn needle to make a really nice finish there, but since this is just our little sample bag, I'm just going to pull that through and get it out of our way. So the next thing you need to do is set the main bag aside and pull back up that bag bottom that you made at the beginning. Additionally, this is where we're going to go ahead and use this plastic canvas. This adds a lot of stability and firmness to the bottom of our bag, so that we can set it down. Of course, on this little size, it looks pretty sturdy, but on the full size, you don't want it to flop over and fall down when you put it down. If you have to put it down on a table or, heaven forbid, on the floor, we want our bag to stand up nice and tall. So these are a great tool to use. This is just simple plastic canvas. I've linked to it in the pattern and in the tutorial, and you can purchase this at your local craft store, wherever you like. What we want to do is just use a sharp pair of scissors to cut 2 squares to the dimensions written out in the pattern. This should be just a little bit smaller than the bag bottom that you already made and set aside. Then what we're going to do is we're going to find the wrong side of that bag bottom. So to me, that's just the opposite side from where I worked that final round. You can see there's my final round. It looks nice. So I'm going to flip it over and call that the wrong side of my bag bottom. So what I want to do now is simply line those up right there. And then using my yarn needle and some of my first color there, the bag bottom color, sew all the way around the outside so that both of those layers are totally tacked down to the inside of our bag bottom. Now, with the original Croy Socks yarn, it's a lot easier to fit through there. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to fit my full-sized yarn through there, at least not with a regular-sized yarn needle, but let's go ahead and give it a try. I'm actually going to pull up this smaller one and see if this works a little better. So what we want to do is cut off a length of that yarn. There we are. I'm going to get this on my yarn needle here and see if this small guy won't fit through here. There we are. And again, I'm not going to tack this down or anything. I'm just going to kind of line it up there in the corner. And then I want to just sew right through. Oh, looks like this one's going to fit pretty well. Good luck there. All right. So we don't want to pull all the way through. Obviously, we want to leave a little end there so that we don't just, keep doing it for fun. We want it to stay together. Let's hold that one down there. And then I'll just come right up through the next space there, right in the grid. So you can just use those holes right in the plastic canvas and go in and out like so. There we are. Find the next one and come up and just take your time and go through both of those layers of plastic canvas all the way around. Since you're using the same color, those stitches should fade right on in to your bag bottom. When you've gone all the way around, you can just finish off those ends so that it's nice and secure. Okay, so as you can see, I've just stitched all the way around through both layers of that plastic canvas. So now our bag bottom is nice and stiff. The other thing I forgot to mention about this plastic that I love is that it is washable. So if your bag gets dirty or soiled, you can still put it, hand wash it or put it in the washing machine if you need to, whatever you need to do. So if you really want it to be green, I would say don't grab a piece of cardboard, but grab some plastic to sew into the bottom of your bag. So once we've got that sewn on, we're going to set it aside again and come back to our original bag here. Now, again, this should be quite a bit taller, but we want to look for that row of treble crochets that we did, round 57. So the first things first, we need to determine the front of the bag. I've still got my seam marked back here, so I always like to leave the seam in the back. Now, one of the reasons we did the turning back and forth when we did our turned rounds was to keep that seam all sort of lined up in one corner. So we'll go ahead and put that in the back of our bag. So we'll call this part our front right here. And what we want to do, when we've got the full-size bag, it has 96 stitches around. So we want to sort of visually fold it, look at it, stare into its sole, find those center 6 stitches right at the front beginning. I'm going to say right there. You see there's 6 posts there between my thumbs. These are going to be the entry and exit points for our handle. So I'm going to take my ribbon, my cord, whatever you're using for your handle, and insert on the left side there. Pull it up a little bit here. We want to leave some good stuff here on the end. We don't want to pull it all the way through. And then we're going to weave back and forth every 6 stitches. Now I've got about a half size one here, but I think it'll still work. We'll see. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we come back to the outside on that side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Go back into the bag. We're just weaving back and forth. And if you find that after you do every 6 stitches, you don't like that, you want it a little closer or even a little further apart, or you want to do some sort of custom number that suits you better, certainly you can feel free. So I'm just going to, pretend there's no seam here, work right over it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Come back from the inside here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Back to the inside of the bag. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Weave it back through again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You get the idea. We just keep going back and forth, basically creating our drawstring here. 6, and it did work out. Oh, good. I was hoping it would here on our little half-size demo, but it did indeed. You can see we've got 6 stitches still between the sides of our handle. Both of our ends are sticking out the front of our bag, and we've gone all the way through. We even have, even though it's our little sample-sized one, we can see we've got a loop opposite our 2 ends here. It's not really a loop. I just pulled on it to create a loop. But a little space there, that will be the handle portion. And then this will be the part that we sew down. So we're all set there. So now what we need to do is get our wooden ring. Again, I used one that was nearly 2 inches wide on my full-size bag. I'm going to use this little half-size one here for our little demo bag today. So the next thing you need to do is just send those 2 ends of your handle through the ring. Then finally, it's time to pull back up our bag bottom. Now, it doesn't really matter which side you want to make front, but what we want to do is we want to sew these handles onto our bag bottom. We're going to go ahead and call this one the front, just because I need to call something the front. We need to turn them and flip them so that we sew them down this way. If we sew them down this way, when we go to sew our bag bottom on, can you see how that will be twisted? So we need to make sure that we don't twist our handles as we sew them onto the bag bottom. So again, we've got our ring on there. We're going to set up our bag so that the front's towards us, the front of our bottom's towards us. Basically going to flip the ends of those handles down to sew them to the front of our bag. Just like that. About 2 inches or so in. If your handle's a little shorter than you'd like, you can, fudge that a little bit, move them out a little bit more. But we just want to sew them down right to the front of our bag so that they're nice and secure. They should be right next to each other, right in the front, right in the middle. So again, we're going to pull up some of our color A, whatever you used for your bag bottom. We want this to match again. Go ahead. We'll get that on our yarn needle, and it's going to need to be the smaller one because we want to go through that plastic canvas as well to make sure that these are sewn down really, really well. So I'm going to kind of move that to the side a little bit, but I want to make sure, again, I'm not twisting those handles at all, and I'm keeping them nice and even and right in the middle there. And then if you wanted to, you could tack those down with some stitch markers. I'm just going to hold them there right in place. Then I'm just going to go right through the straps themselves and right through to the bottom of the bag. I just want to make sure these are sewn down really well. So if you're using something like leather, you may need to use a glue. If you're using a ribbon, you may need to use sewing thread. So you'll need to adapt this to whatever you are using for your handles. I'm just kind of feeling the spaces in those grids and going back and forth through my handles here. And I'll go back and forth a couple times, probably sew a couple lines. There are lots of assembly photos included in the written instructions. So if you don't feel like you're getting a good view of it here, there's probably a better still photo of it there in the written pattern. There we are. But you can see I've gone back and forth a couple times, and I would just go ahead and maybe hide it in there a little bit so it's not as obvious. Find a hole to come up in here nearby. Let's see. That one looks good. And then go ahead and grab that end of the handle there. There we are. So just make sure that your handle ends are sewn down nice and secure to your bag bottom on the right side here. Again, making sure, you can see it's twisted right now because I've been sewing with it, but we want to make sure that it doesn't twist inside those rings. Once those are nice and tacked down, you can go ahead and finish off these ends, and we're ready for our final assembly. Okay, so our handles are secured to the base of our bag bottom here on the wrong side. We've got our ring through there, our drawstrings on. We're ready to sew our bag bottom to our bag. And as you can see, when I set it right on top there, the straps are untwisted. They're nice and straight. If one side's a little longer than the other, don't worry about it. We can just pull that out on the back. That's no big deal. The main thing is now we want to flip it over. You can see here, there's that front. Keep that at the front. And we are going to be sewing that down all the way around. See, there should be that little lip right there that you can go through so you don't have to sew through that plastic canvas again. What I do recommend you do, though, is take some stitch markers at this point. Find those corners, those little chain one corners on your base, and then you can really look for the corners around row around 25 or so on your actual bag. And just take some time and line those up at the corners. It's always easier to take a few minutes here at the beginning than it is to pull out your stitches. Any little ends like this that you don't feel like sewing in, make sure those are tucked to the inside of the bag. Also make sure they're secure, of course, whether that's with a knot or weaving it in. Let's see, right about there looks good. You can sort of go through too and make sure you're pinning it to the same round all the way around. And we've got our final corner here. So I'll look for that corner there and hook it up. And then we simply take our yarn needle and our color A again and sew through this layer. Let's go ahead and do a few stitches. We'll go through that layer on into the inside of the bag. And again, you can weave in those ends when you get to the end. Make sure you don't pull that first end all the way through. Nothing worse than when you've been sewing and realize you've pulled the yarn all the way through. There we are. And then you can just, however you like to stitch, whether that's a running stitch or a mattress stitch, we just want to get it sewn on nice and secure. Now, when you do sew around, be sure again to go through those handles there at that edge, just so that they stay down really nice and secure. Then your bag is done. Give the loop opposite the wooden handle there, more of a tug, to create that handle and back, and then you can pull up that ring, send your little handle there through the ring, and you're all set to go. And that's how to crochet the ring rose bag. As we take a look at the finished one here, you can see I've simply sewn on all the way around that bag bottom, which is now nice and stiff. The handles are secure, and I've got that ring on there. We can see here, this is up through round 35. And then we've got that beautiful Trinity stitch, our treble crochets, those last couple rounds of single crochet just to sort of top it off. And then we've got our loop and our ring. And just like that, you've made your own bag. I hope you enjoy this pattern, and I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks so much for watching, everybody.